Great news.
Very good. Great news. Yes.
Mahu Tafiri, he'll be at the Olympics. Maybe Israel comes home with an Olympic medal. We shall see. We're out of time. Dahlia, Peter, thank you very much for your company this evening. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Do join us for that. Good night.
History. Join
it does appear that this year is more extreme than previous monsoon seasons.
The climate of southern Europe is changing, say local people. It's becoming more and more like North Africa.
And the authorities are warning people that the temperatures aren't just record-breaking, they're life-threatening.
Get the full story with bbc.com/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.
I'm Sumi Somaskanda in Washington, and this is BBC World News America. Florida braces for another major storm. Forecasters say Idalia is expected to make landfall as a Category 3 hurricane, bringing heavy winds, flooding, and possibly a storm surge. The U.S. commemorates 60 years since Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech and March on Washington. We speak to Dr. King's daughter about her father's vision in today's America.
We're not yet in that nation. They will not be judged by the color of skin, but the content of their character. I think he would still have that dream.
And a dramatic rise in violence in the occupied West Bank. We bring you a special report on nightly Israeli military raids and Palestinian attacks, as well as a record rise in Israeli settler violence. Welcome to World News America. Preparations are underway in the U.S. state of Florida as it braces for a major storm. Tropical storm Idalia is barreling towards Florida with landfall expected Wednesday. And before it hits, forecasters say that it's expected to intensify to a dangerous Category 3 hurricane. The National Hurricane Center warned that it could bring life-threatening conditions to parts of Florida as soon as Tuesday. And in anticipation of that storm, Tampa International Airport will be closed starting midday Tuesday. The airport plans to shut down until at least early Thursday to secure its planes and prepare equipment on the ground. U.S. President Joe Biden spoke with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and approved an emergency declaration for the state in preparation for the storm. Now, Mr. DeSantis declared a state of emergency in 46 Florida counties, saying the storm will have major impacts. Now, on this day, 60 years ago, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech to thousands of civil rights marchers in Washington, D.C. The speech continues to resonate in the U.S. and across the world. It described Dr. King's dream of a more just and equitable America. Many credit it for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the landmark civil rights and labor law that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris met with Dr. King's family and march organizers on Monday to mark the anniversary. And we have more on Monday's anniversary, including the full interview with Dr. Bernice King on our website, bbc.com/news. Now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is pledging $1 million to increase security at a historically black college in Jacksonville, Florida. That comes after a white gunman tried to enter the university before shooting and killing 3 black people at a nearby convenience store. Police say the shooting was racially motivated, and they discovered several manifestos left behind by the gunman detailing his hatred for black people. Before going to the convenience store, the shooter first went to Edward Waters University, a historically black college, but was turned away after refusing to identify himself. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the U.S. must do everything it can to keep guns out of dangerous hands. Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump says he will appeal the trial date set by a federal judge in D.C. on charges of trying to overturn the 2020 presidential election result. The judge has set that date for March 4th, 2024. That is one day before Super Tuesday, when more than a dozen states vote in the Republican primary to pick a candidate for the 2024 presidential election. Now, Mr. Trump announced his intention to appeal on social media. His lawyers had previously pushed for a date in 2026. This is just one of 4 criminal prosecutions the former president faces. He surrendered last week in Georgia in a separate election interference case. His arraignment for that case will be September 6th, but he is not required to appear in court. Spain's Football Federation has asked its president, Luis Rubiales, to resign. It is the latest development after Spanish prosecutors announced earlier on Monday that they launched a sexual assault investigation into his actions. Mr. Rubiales caused outrage when he kissed the footballer Jenny Hermoso on the lips after the national team won the Women's World Cup. Hermoso said she did not consent to that kiss. Guy Hedgecoe is in Madrid with more updates. So let's take a look at the actions that brought us to today's developments. It started when Luis Rubiales kissed Jenny Hermoso on the lips during the World Cup winning ceremony. 4 days later, World Football's governing body, FIFA, opened disciplinary proceedings into Rubiales' behavior. The next day, Rubiales refused to resign from his post and said the kiss was consensual. But Jenny Hermoso rebuffed those claims later that very day, and more than 80 footballers said they would boycott playing for the national team until Rubiales is removed. Then on the 26th, FIFA announced it was suspending Rubiales pending the outcome of its proceedings. Yesterday, Spain's Football Federation announced an internal investigation was underway. All of this brings us to today, when the Federation asked Rubiales to resign. Prosecutors opened their sexual assault investigation, and as we heard, Rubiales' mother announced her hunger strike. The UN says Israeli settlers are now carrying out an average of 3 attacks every day against Palestinians in the West Bank, forcing ever more Palestinians off of land that they own. Israeli settlements in the West Bank are widely considered illegal under international law, but within Israel, the settler movement is enjoying growing support for the country's new right-wing dominated government. Our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell reports from Palestine. France will ban students from wearing a type of Muslim dress in state-run schools starting in September. There have been months of debate over whether the loose-fitting, full-length robe called an abaya should be allowed in schools where the wearing of headscarves is already banned. Now, the abaya covers the whole body except the head and can be worn with a head covering, such as the hijab or the niqab. The French Education Minister Gabriel Attal held a news conference today to discuss the ban and called for unity. Now, France has a strict ban on religious signs in state schools and government buildings, arguing that they violate secular laws. Wearing a headscarf in state-run schools has been banned there since 2004. Let's take a look at some other headlines now. In the UK, a technical issue hit air traffic control systems earlier today, causing severe delays and cancellations across the board. The UK National Air Traffic Service was able to identify and fix the problem with its control systems, but not before hundreds of flights in and out of the UK were cancelled, including flights to and from the US. Delays and cancellations are expected to continue while the backlog of flights is cleared. And U.S. gymnast Simone Biles has made history after winning a record 8th national all-around title at the U.S. Gymnastics Championships in California. She vaulted back to the top of the sport after taking a 2-year break to focus on mental health. And with the win, the 4-time Olympic gold medalist broke the record for the most all-around national titles for a man or woman. Now, before we go, it was meant to be the unveiling of a mystery. A time capsule from the 1800s was recently discovered inside the base of a monument at the West Point Military Academy right here in the U.S. Now, it's believed to be the work of 5 cadets, one of which may have been Robert E. Lee, the future Confederate general. So officials at the Academy hoped the contents of the small lead box could possibly provide a window into the institution's history. But when they opened the capsule, live streamed around the world, there was nothing in it but dust. Quite a disappointment there. All right, remember you can find more on all the day's news at our website, plus to see what we're working on at any time, check us out on Twitter. Thank you for watching World News America.
Hello, here's a look at the latest
Hello
forecast
there.
for Europe,
Our
where
final
we've seen
bank
some
holiday
exceptionally
weekend of
stormy
the summer
conditions
season was
through the
certainly
western
dominated by
Mediterranean.